Hi, I thought I'd talk about the story or an interpretation of Das Lebewohl, the first movement of Beethoven's Sonata in E flat major, Opus 81a. And I thought I'd maybe talk about it, one in the just that it might be interesting in the with the idea of music appreciation. If you hear an interpretation of what's going on in the music, it would be a way to listen to it. It might be access to the music. And this sonata is quite unusual in that, on the one hand, Beethoven he called this movement Das Lebewohl, which means the farewell. And on the first three chords, Beethoven has written Lebewohl. So I think this, is one of the rare occasions where Beethoven adds an extra musical significance or meaning to the notes, which would suggest it's program music. On the other hand, its parts of the movement are quite abstract, like the development section. The main theme of the Allegro, it's not so clear as to what Beethoven could have in mind in terms of melody. And when you think of music in terms of melody and just recognizable tunes, that's quite absent in this development, which is kind of ironic in a way, given that it's clearly with Beethoven writing Das Lebewohl, it's clearly program music, for the want of a better term. So I just thought I'd share my interpretation of the music, and it might help with your interpretation, your getting familiar with the music, or just listening to it, that you've got something to listen for, a story to go with the sounds you're hearing. So Beethoven begins, he's written Lebewohl over the first three chords, and you can hear on that last chord, it goes to a C minor, and that adds a sort of a sadness or a melancholy to the farewell. And I think with music, the music can represent, on the one hand, Beethoven has it representing the word Lebewohl. On the other hand, it can represent the experience, in my mind, it can represent the experience of the Lebewohl. It's kind of all encompassing what it can represent. And I get the impression that it's often attributed to the sonata has been dedicated to Herzog Rudolf von Österreich, and that's the Archduke of Austria. And given this dedication, that I get the impression, Henley Verlag at a footnote with regard to Das Lebewohl written in for the first movement, they write, superscription in Beethoven's own hand, the farewell, Vienna, 4th May 1809, on the departure of His Royal Highness the esteemed Archduke Rudolph. So given that, I think people can, it's understood that the farewell is in reference to this Archduke Rudolph. But I see it that Beethoven is saying the farewell is between Beethoven and his immortal beloved, his unsterbliche Geliebte. And I think it's his immortal beloved that turns up here in the sonata, and that's who he's saying goodbye to. Or Beethoven and his immortal beloved are saying goodbye to each other. So it begins with that Lebewohl. And then you have the Lebewohl, the farewell is repeated, and I think in the notes you can hear the Lebewohl. So, and in the notes you can hear the Lebewohl repeated. And then it betrays a certain extra pathos. But it's contained, it's reserved. It doesn't, it sticks to the program. And it's repeated. It's not allowed. Not allowed out of its confinement. And all it does is leads to a repeat of the Lebewohl. So after that next farewell, I see Beethoven drawing his immortal beloved closer. And you have a new farewell, a more intimate, honest, heartfelt farewell, vulnerable. And Beethoven goes into E flat minor, and that C flat major chord in E flat minor to me represents the tenderest of all embraces. And here they are, they've dropped the formalities, the the restraint, the mask, and they're allowing their feelings for each other to come true. And it's not restrained. It starts to explore, go through the different keys. It doesn't hold back. They don't hold back. And it could be, they're thinking, what if, or maybe I can stay, maybe we can be together. But then it ends with Beethoven's immortal beloved pulling away. And here I see the next, I give the next chords words. So they may not be correct. I mean, obviously, I'm guessing. But I see Beethoven's immortal beloved saying, "Ich muss jetzt gehen." And that means I have to leave now. So with those next 4 chords in bar 12, she's saying, "Ich muss jetzt gehen." And it has resolve. She's showing strength and determination that this is it. And then she repeats those words, "Ich muss jetzt gehen." And again, she's still trying to hold on to that resolve. But it's not so. It's starting to waver. And then she repeats it again. Only this time she says, "Ich muss jetzt gehen." I have to go now. So she's exposing her own helplessness, that she's just as trapped by the circumstances as Beethoven is, that they can't be together. And there's powers at play that she can't resist, that she can't decide for herself, and she's showing her vulnerability, her helplessness in saying, "I have to go now, ich muss jetzt gehen," instead of "ich muss jetzt gehen," instead of being, in charge of it. It's bigger than her. She has no choice. She can't fight it. She can't fight the circumstances and be with Beethoven. And here, when she says "Ich muss jetzt gehen," it ends in the A flat minor. And I think this is if anybody's watching this who's seen my other videos and has seen that description of major and minor being hard and soft keys, I think this fits that description of a minor key being the soft key. That fits wonderfully here. in that when she says ich muss jetzt gehen, stressing that I have to go, it ends in that soft key. It's, there's a sadness. And then she says it again, ich muss jetzt gehen. Only the next time it's in the hard, in A flat major it ends, in the hard key. And so it's like the final resolve is there. There is no fighting it. There is no alternative. And that's the Adagio. And then it goes into the Allegro. And this next theme or motif, whatever you'd want to call it, I see this as the shock for Beethoven, the moment of horror. And this is when his immortal beloved is actually leaving. And it goes again, it's going through key after key. It doesn't get a grip. And the way I see this, picture it, is the horse, the carriage with the horses. It starts off, the horses start off, but they start off with such a violent shock, such a force that the wheels don't yet spin. And the carriage has begun to move, but the wheels don't spin, and I see them skidding on the gravel before the wheels start to move. And I think this is what Beethoven, in a state of shock to be losing his immortal beloved, he notices that the sound of the wheels skidding on the gravel. So you have that initial shock, that traumatic, he's witnessing the trauma, in shock, how the carriage sets off with such violent force that the wheels skid in the gravel before they start to move, and it's gone. It's so abrupt. And then there's a moment of suspended animation, just a moment of disbelief. And as he comes to the reality of it, it goes in the left hand, you have the movement of the carriage, and it's juxtaposed on top with Beethoven's Lament, that his immortal beloved is gone. And then this ends in a kind of a madness. Of the misery that Beethoven experiences, that his immortal beloved is gone. And then it breaks down into despair. And the room is spinning, his surroundings are spinning, it's nothing is stable, he's just experiencing this sense of despair. And in it, he's haunted again by the idea of ich muss jetzt gehen. You can hear that in the melody line. Beethoven is overcome with sadness. And still nothing is normal. It's still spinning. It's still racing, his emotions, and they just keep going down and down. Everything starts to spiral like the ground has opened up beneath him, and he's just falling till he breaks down weeping in bar 62. And those first 3 notes on the right hand, you could maybe hear him say, hear the words Lebewohl again, and it's just echoed down. He breaks down weeping. And then I see the next bit into the development section as it transitions. And I see it transitioning to him maybe at night, he's asleep. And so he's still plagued by the trauma of his immortal beloved leaving him. And so Beethoven is asleep. And it comes back as a nightmare, that departure. And because it's a dream, it's part of his subconscious, the dream world. It's distorted and disjointed. It doesn't go in the line. And so he's attacked by this distorted, disjointed dream. And it goes, and he turns in his sleep. And then he's attacked again by, this time, just the initial shock, the initial vision of it. But the details, now, because it's a dream, are only fragmented. They're just, they're not there in clarity. And then he turns again in his sleep. And again he's attacked, he's ambushed by this vision, this shock. And again the details are faint, they're just, they're hazy, they're like a nightmare, but still unsettling, uneasy, but he can't, he's asleep. And he turns in his bed again, and again he's attacked by the vision and these dream-like details, nightmarish details. And these attacks are building, they're heading in a direction, they're heading back towards that E-flat major of the departure. And then is the biggest attack, that vision, and then the details, only the details don't subside, they continue. And then when it seems like he's going to be, shocked awake, be woken with a start, it comes back, but the traumatic event comes back, only it's sinking. It's not as immediate as it was when it actually happened. And so it sinks, and it subsides again into the dream, the slumber is taking over. And so Beethoven is, with the chords on top, Beethoven is falling asleep. It's a battle between his agitated state of distress and sleep overcoming him. And so on the one hand you have the chords on the right hand, and in the left hand you have the nightmarish agitation, stress, or torment of the departure. And eventually the torment, it doesn't ease, but it becomes monotonous. It has a sort of a monotonous rhythm. And in that way, it becomes hypnotic. And Beethoven starts to fall asleep. He starts to forget. And it's quiet. And to me, here you can almost sense Beethoven breathing. And you can almost sense sleep taking over, a deep sleep, a dreamless sleep. Only it doesn't happen. The trauma resurges. And it comes back to the full force again as it had been when his immortal beloved first left. And so you have the same again. And this, only the second time, you have the lament. It stays a bit more stable. But that doesn't last. What you get, the result then is his madness comes on even quicker and even more forceful. And he's back again to that despair, to everything spinning, where nothing is normal, nothing can relax, nothing can settle. And again, it spirals down till he breaks down weeping, and you get that Lebewohl, another Lebewohl in the right hand. And then it transitions again. And again, the shock attacks him. As any, if anybody has experienced a loss, a real loss, that the emotion of it comes back, it attacks you, it comes out of nowhere. And you know, it decides when it returns, and when it you're just overwhelmed by the emotion, the shock of the event. And here it is again. It returns, only this time again it's sinking. It lacks the immediacy of the actual event. It's starting to lose its grip. And so what happens is, in that moment, the moment of disbelief, it's not as hard. He's gone into F minor. And so again, this is another great example of the minor keys being soft and major keys being hard. It's soft now. It doesn't have the edge anymore that the initial shocks he experienced had. And the lament, you go back to the movement of the carriages and Beethoven's lament over it, only this time it's in F minor, it's in a soft key. So it's lost the edge. And to me, it's like here, he prolongs it. The shock is prolonged, and then the lament after the shock is prolonged. And it's like almost he's willing it to continue his misery. He doesn't want, it's almost like as if, he'll be betraying his immortal beloved if he ever gets over this separation. So he's prolonging it as long as he possibly can. But then it just suddenly stops. And the reality suddenly sets in. And so you get the Lebewohl returning, the farewell returning. And it's there as fact, and I think is in this moment is the moment of acceptance. When the reality is there, it was a farewell and it's happened. And the way it returns is it's so unquestioning that it doesn't need to the single notes alone are enough without the harmonies. It doesn't need to have those harmonies playing too, because it just is. This is the reality. There is no it's acceptance of the way it is. And then Beethoven returns to that, there's a threat there of returning to the horror, of going back to the grief and the misery and the trauma of that separation. Only he lets go. So instead of that traumatic event coming back, it returns back to the E flat major. And then what you hear is, in the right hand you hear that Lebewohl again, only life has begun again. The hustle and bustle of life. Underneath is the Lebewohl, the continually present, but life is, it's so busy, it's so full that it obscures the Lebewohl, it takes over, it drowns it out, and Beethoven is getting swept away by life again, kind of almost enjoying himself. Life carries on and it doesn't stop and it doesn't care about the Lebewohl, and you get swept along, you forget it and you start to live your life again. And then the Lebewohl returns once more. Only this time it's become a cherished memory without the trauma, without the distress that he was suffering from. And it's like he's recalling it before sleep. And he's falling asleep with the thoughts of this farewell on his mind. And then as he falls asleep, it descends to the point where he and his immortal beloved are almost reunited again. They're so close. In Beethoven's dreams, she's right there. And in that moment, it's very real. They're almost reunited. Only it stops. And his subconscious is telling him, you thought you were here. You thought she was there, but you're not. You're down here. And she is up there. And she is moving away from him as he moves away from her. And they end as far from each other as they possibly can be. And those last three notes, I see them as the last Lebewohl, where Beethoven has finally gone through that farewell. So that's how I see what's going on in Beethoven's, in that movement of Beethoven's sonata. And I think the way he expressed those things in the music, it's a true work of art. And hopefully, you might enjoy that. On the end screen I have a performance I've uploaded, or the interpretation on YouTube, where I manage to say most of the things that I've alluded to there. You're welcome. I'll be happy if you were to have a listen to it. Of course, you can listen to any recording, and hopefully maybe it enhances the experience, or it helps with your own interpretation of the piece, if you happen to be learning it. And just in terms of any ideas that that this Lebewohl is directed towards the Archduke Rudolph, I would say that would probably make this the gayest sonata ever written. So I hope you enjoy it and get something out of it, and I thought I'd just try it, give it a go, see how this video comes across. So thanks. Bye.